Well, thanks for tuning in once again. This is News Sausage, the program that unpacks the news of the week in a delightfully sausage kind of way. We are your hosts, Dan Marks and Sunny Riverside. Say hi, Sunny.
Hello, world. This is Sunny. I'm coming to you from the shithole of the Midwest, place where dreams go to die.
Oh, man. Since you brought that up, I have to point out, too, that Beavis and Butthead were only allowed to say bunghole on TV, and now I cannot wipe the shithole off my feed to save my life. It's kind of getting to me.
I was thinking about that myself. Do you remember the episode of South Park where the demons were taking over the world, and every time one of the characters cursed on television, there was a little counter, ding, ding, ding.
Oh, yeah. I think it was shit. I think they were trying to figure out how many times they say shit. And I don't know if we have to label this as explicit anymore either, since it's been all over
Apparently
the news
not.
and everything either. I think shit is now off the George Carlin 7 list right now.
Dang. So that only leaves.
Well, we have 3 more years of Trump, potentially. It's been kind of an exciting week this week. The Fire and Fury book and a lot of things happening in D.C. and got some interesting things to talk about this week. But that Fire and Fury book's a little beat to death. But you have anything to comment about that?
I'm glad that it's out. We don't know how much of it is accurate, how much of it is factual. There's a presumption that a majority of it is. I think there's also a presumption that the author has done some editorializing, some opinion in there. Might be that he has interviewed some people who just had axes to grind. It's hard to say. Trump wants to completely discredit it. I've heard other accounts on NPR where it pretty much said, take it with a grain of salt. It's not a Pulitzer-winning expose of investigative journalism. Wherever it falls on the continuum, I'm glad that it's come out, and it's kind of, you can see a little bit of light shining through cracks in the wall, so to speak.
Right. Like with any portrait that a painter might paint, I think the overall impression is what you're supposed to get from the character of this politician, rather than get too involved in the details of each and every one of these stories, but just be left with an impression. I think he definitely succeeded in that. And we haven't talked a whole lot about our senator from the state of Iowa, Chuck Grassley, otherwise known as Charles to some people. Charles is about to 99 county tour.
It's called the full Grassley. Other politicians who have tried to do the same, whether it's for governor or for Senate, have done the same thing. They call it the full Grassley, making a stop in all 99 counties.
A lot of people might go to these things over the course of the year. We have some ideas about questions that you might want to ask if you haven't thought of any yourself. What question would you ask Senator Grassley if he came to your county?
Well, I would like to ask him a couple of questions. One is, Senator, given your willingness to go along with whatever Mr. Trump says, I need to ask you, why is it, do you believe that the occupant of the White House is competent to be there? And if so, why?
That's a great question. I think that's a great question. The president is inexcusable these days, and to hear him try to justify his support would be very revealing. Open-ended questions like that, you never know what's going to come out. It would be a great opportunity to hear that.
Yeah, and understanding as well that it maybe might make him do a little self-reflection, if that's possible. Like, well, if I believe he's competent, then, what's that say about me?
Right. Now, I recall not too long ago that Chuck Grassley had told everybody that if you're not a multimillionaire by a certain age, then you've been blowing all your money on movies, drinking, and women. I took a look at Chuck Grassley's net. It happens to be far less than I expected. And so I would ask Senator Chuck Grassley, I've seen your personal net worth, and it's not anywhere close to $10 million. In fact, it's not even close to $5 million. And so my question, quite simply, is what's your favorite movie? What's your favorite drink? And who are these women you've given millions of dollars to over the years? All right.
Yeah, that is a good question.
All right. So I thought you would enjoy that.
I'm just trying to picture Senator Grassley. What movies is he queuing up to with with Mrs. Grassley, who's bilking him out of movies and liquor?
Well, we don't want to point to her. Do we hope in this instance that it would be her or other women that are responsible for taking all of his money?
Well, I don't know. I sure wouldn't like to think Grandpa was unfaithful to his wife.
Maybe that's a follow-up question. Was it the missus or was it some other women? So what other questions might we potentially ask our visiting Senator Grassley?
Well, I was kind of taking a cue from some of the video that I've seen online of people protesting at his town hall meetings, not really protesting, but showing up to ask him these very same kind of pointed questions. Questions such as, Senator, what is your objection to the release of the transcripts of testimony on the Russian investigation? Why are you wanting to keep the public in the dark?
Yeah, that's a good question, especially since the guy who gave that testimony wanted that information released. It doesn't hurt our position to get testimony or cooperation, and then it uncovers that there was a source before him that revealed there was some kind of connection between the Russians and the Trump campaign, which was not out before, which in essence would exonerate that particular person that they're seeking criminal penalties for. That's pretty convoluted.
Yeah, that is really convoluted. It smells bad.
It really does. He came out this week and actually said that there is no conspiracy in the GOP to shut down these investigations, but it sure seems like it when you've got people on the House and Trump telling them to do something about this in his tweets. It's a little right out there in front of everybody, and we can see it.
Yeah, exactly. It's similar to Trump repeating that there's no collusion even when he's not asked about it. There's no conspiracy. Absolutely not. I'm not conspiring with the rest of the party to an end of this investigation.
It has gotten to the point, too, where we actually have 6 members of Congress this week accused the GOP of jamming up the Russian probe, which includes members of Congress Cummings, Nadler, Engel, Waters, Thompson, and Brady. So they're not really tolerating this anymore. They're going to bring it out. Hopefully, we'll get a fair investigation of all this thing. I think it's pretty important, especially as we're coming up to an election this year.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. What is your next question?
We do have, my question to the senator would also have to encompass this election. And there's obviously information coming out. He got very angry earlier in 2017 as Democrats kept pressing for more information on the Russian meddling in the election and really lost his temper with one of our members in that committee. And since then, we have Manafort, who is under house arrest and then violated his house arrest agreement by coordinating with Russians in an op-ed secretly. And now he can only talk to his lawyers and family. And he ought to be behind bars, really, I think, personally. He's being treated more than fairly. You also have 2 other plea agreements in place with Flynn and Papadopoulos. So there's definitely something going on there. Absolutely. He would have probably given up already. I just saw that there's more indictments being issued, so we'll see how that plays out this week. But there's definitely something going on there. And so my question to the senator would be, with all of this going on, you're head of the Judiciary Committee and have left us vulnerable to Russian attack in our democracy again this year. If everybody in the country kind of wakes up to that fact and they all ask very nicely, for the good of the country, would you be willing to resign? When it comes time to take the keys away from Grandpa, they're not always real happy about that either, but
exactly.
Everybody gets to that point, if they're lucky.
I've known people who have been confronting the senator at town halls for the last 2 terms he's been in and really pressing him exactly that way to, why don't you step down, Senator? You're not doing us any good. Some people being exactly as blunt as that. And that's happening across the state now. Anytime he's going, even to, it happened just Friday, he had a town hall in Northwest Iowa, Steve King country of all places, a place where he really, really carries the election.
In Steve King country.
Yes. And
wow.
He was, and people asking really pointed questions, and it appears all to be completely independent too. Independent activists, not any organized internet thing. There weren't people sitting there with the green and red cards about agree or disagree. It was individuals who came loaded for bear with questions, and they want answers. So, Dan, when we were discussing earlier, I recall that you had a question that you would like to ask Senator Grassley about his encouraging some action on the part of Jeff Sessions.
That's right. And another thing. Oh, my gosh. I'm seeing in the Cedar Rapids Gazette an article titled Grassley Planted Seeds for Sessions Marijuana Crackdown. And I thought, seeing that, you might even want to walk back a little bit of your Nazi neocon label for Grassley, maybe put him a little bit more on the Nazi side this time. But at any rate, I think that him pushing Sessions to crack down on states with marijuana, legalized marijuana, right after the state legalized medical marijuana for certain conditions here. They've already granted the rights to Chemin Industries here in Des Moines to be the sole dispensary for medical marijuana in the state of Iowa.
And the sole producer as well. That's
right. He just handed them a whole bunch. The state just handed them a whole bunch of money, and he turns around, regardless, after the state legislature has approved it, he's going to sick Jeff Sessions on the state of Iowa. I guess my question there is, what have you got against Iowa?
Yeah, right. What the heck is he thinking? We may need to have a new segment of the podcast called "What the Heck Are You Thinking?" You make an excellent point there. He's demonstrating contrary to the will of the people of Iowa yet again. Even the Republican-controlled Iowa legislature and governor have approved this legislation that enables limited production and limited use and limited distribution of cannabis-based medicine. Why does he hate our freedom?
Well, he's opened up the state and I think directly Chemin Industries, if they actually do what the state's granted them the authority to do, and now they're going to be subject to arrest. And I mean, that would be major because obviously they'd be producing quite a bit. So thoughtless. He used to be the kind of senator we were talking earlier, the way that he used to be, more the, conservative neocon. You called him a paleocon before. He was honorable. He was a guy that seemed to look out for the state of Iowa, even though he was a Republican, of the kind of guy that decent people can work with on reasonable issues. And this kind of thing really underscores the point. He's really moved away from that kind of position to really his own personal agenda this term. He's a little mean and thoughtless.
Yeah, I agree with that. It is clearly his own personal agenda without any consideration of his constituents' wishes. He's a contrary man. Yeah, right. Maybe he's not even a neocon. I think we should all be thinking about posing those sorts of questions to Senator Grassley when he comes to our county or sends his delegate. But also, moving from the Senate to the House, our other illustrious member of Congress, Steve King, made the news again this week. If you can believe it or not, he made a racist comment. Well,
no.
Well, actually, he didn't make his own racist comment. He just piggybacked on the back of a racist comment made by Trump when Trump made his reference to shithole countries in Africa and Haiti and pretty much everywhere that is populated by people with brown skin. Steve King went on Twitter and to proudly say, "Oh God, I don't even like to say it. Hang in there, Mr. President. If those countries aren't as you described, Democrats should be happy to deport criminal aliens back to them and end anchor babies, too."
Oh,
Yeah.
man. Boy, he's nauseating. So, again, it just lets me down so much hearing about those kinds of things about people from the state of Iowa where we are. It's just not the people I know here in Iowa, by and large. I'm sure there's some people out there like that. And people around the country are really getting the wrong impression when they see our
Oh, it's
politicians these
embarrassing.
days. It
It's
is. It is. And
absolutely, it's horrible.
we're ashamed, folks, and just want to put that out there.
Interestingly, it seems that Steve King is just painting with broad strokes that anyone who enters this country must be here illegally, it seems. He doesn't seem to comprehend legal immigration. The question that Trump is discussing is allowing people to legally emigrate from other countries, and King is lumping them in with people who cross the borders illegally. I'm not sure how that got convoluted in his head.
I've looked into this too, and there's so much anger about, hey, they crossed the border illegally. They should be sent back. They should be sent back to where they've come from. Deport. Steve King even mentioned in that tweet, deporting people. And I've heard it over and over again from people on the right. So I had one of these discussions recently with a friend at work, and I told him that I didn't think that the penalty for crossing the border was that stiff, and I compared it to a traffic ticket, and he's like, that's not even reasonable. And well, here in the state of Iowa, in fact, that if you're speeding and you're going 11 to 15 miles an hour over the speed limit, the total fine with all the fees and everything is $222. If you're speeding up to 20 miles an hour, between 15 and 20 miles an hour, the fine for that is $242 because the crime is actually worse. You know, the penalty goes up because it's worse. Do you know, I looked it up. Do you know what the penalty for crossing the border would be?
I do not know that. That was not a statute I memorized.
Well, no, probably not in Iowa here. But as it reads here, any alien who is apprehended while entering or attempting to enter the United States at a time or place other than designated by immigration officers shall be subject to a civil penalty of at least $50, but not more than $250 for each entry, or twice the amount specified in the paragraph in the case of an alien who has been previously subject to a civil penalty under this subsection. It would be $500, which is closer to the penalty that somebody would get of $465 when they fail to properly stop at a railroad track here in the state of Iowa. So,
and it's significant, the wording of that, too. I hadn't expected that. Civil penalty is not the same as a criminal fine.
Correct. So, is this something that, you wouldn't add deportation to not stopping at railroad tracks? They haven't added that here in the actual penalty of, see, that's the actual law that's being broken, is crossing that border without permission. That's the penalty for it.
It's not being present in the country without permission. It is. So you're saying that the crime begins and ends at the point where the person crosses that invisible plane of the border.
Right. The existence of that person is not illegal, so that's why the term illegals is offensive. They're not illegal people. Their existence doesn't make them illegal just because they're here. The crime was crossing the border, just like the crime would be not stopping at the railroad tracks properly. Not providing enough distance between the train and your car is actually a crime that would carry that kind of penalty. If you were texting while driving, it's far worse. It's like $800. And
what if you were texting when you crossed the railroad tracks?
Well, you would get charged with both of those penalties. And the person who's crossed the border illegally, they're undocumented, and they might have an illegal arrangement with an employer where they're not documenting that employment, and that's another crime,
right,
which might have another penalty, but none of which are deportation. And he's a Nazi.
Yeah, I don't have a problem using that term for King. Yeah, it kind of actually seemingly in a semi-related to the immigration, because everything's tied together. But it's been interesting to see Walmart announce a positive. I'm really not a fan of Walmart in any way, but they have announced that they are increasing their starting wage for employees at up to $11 an hour, which applaud them for that. That's a step in the right direction. And then, of course, optics of the whole thing. Immediately after announcing the wage increase, they announced a lot of layoffs. They're closing some 64 Sam's Clubs. There were 640 Sam's Clubs, rather, across the country, which is going to account for something like just over 7,000 jobs. Walmart has 1.5 million employees, so 7,000 jobs out of that 1.5 million isn't a substantial part of their workforce. But it is, as we were discussing before, it is a recognition that Walmart itself is being out-Walmarted by Amazon. The online retailing is what's causing even Walmart to shut its doors. It's an amazing revolution that's happening.
Yeah, I don't know if Amazon is that much better than Walmart by any means. They might even be worse for all I know. But, the optics of that $11 an hour, if they're raising their starting wage to that much, it's nice to hear them raising it. But still, $11 an hour at a company that doesn't usually let their employees get to 40 hours a week with benefits is a very small percentage of their company. So I don't know if the optics on that are as good as what Walmart might think they are. So it's an interesting play by them. But either way, it looks like Amazon's crushing them and a lot of other stores out there. People are finding it far too easy, and I have to admit I've used it myself. Do have a little bit of guilt about it, to tell you the truth.
Oh yeah. It's happening all over the world, all over the United States. I was just driving down a residential street earlier today, and there was a mail truck delivering packages, and it was a United States mail truck, and the back door of it was open, and the entire cargo area of the truck was full of boxes with the Amazon logo. It was quite eye-opening.
Wow. And they're going to be delivering by drone and things soon. At least that's their plans for what I hear. I think they've already started at major cities. That's only going to take more jobs away from distribution all over the country. And I know that's a predominant occupation for those people across the South and very rural communities. They find a lot of opportunity in trucking. That's going to devastate those people. We might see the South all of a sudden come around to a minimum basic income for living, something along those lines.
Yeah, well, there's a pinch happening, and people are going to adapt one way or another, whether that's working 3 jobs instead of 2.
Walmart also recently made a deal with Tesla to get the new robot trucks, which would have a driver in the front truck, and then the trailing trucks would be with no drivers. They bought those, and they're electric and cutting edge. And, there's that double-edged sword where it's good because it's a green vehicle, but at the same time, it is putting people out of work. But, we're not in the kind of world where we prevent progress because we're trying to save jobs. Otherwise, we would have never had an automotive revolution in this country worrying about buggy whip makers.
Right.
It's time to phase out a lot of these jobs, too, and we've got to deal with that. We sure don't have the kind of leadership that's prepared for that kind of big picture thinking right now either.
No, certainly not. When we've got a president who thinks he's going to stimulate the economy by bringing back coal production for people.
Right. You had another thing you were talking about, but you wanted to save it for the show. What's up? What do you got? I kind of surprised you last week. What do you have up your sleeve this week?
Well, I just wanted to grill you a little bit ask your perspective. Yesterday, as I'm sure you are aware, there was a false alarm in Hawaii where everyone on the islands were warned that there was an incoming missile strike. People were seeking shelter in manhole covers and bathtubs and whatnot. Having firsthand experience as being a Hawaiian, I was just looking for your perspective on that. What would Dan do if the missiles were coming down?
Wow. I honestly don't know. I saw this. I'm still friends with a lot of people back in Hawaii. And of course, when this came up, people are chatting immediately on Facebook saying, I just got this warning. And so I was kind of watching it happen. My wife still has the area code 808 on her phone, and she got the text herself.
Wow.
Because it was confused. It thought it was sending a text to somebody in Hawaii. And so she got the alert here in Iowa. There's a missile coming.
Hey.
And most of my friends seem to kind of not go seek shelter. I was more of a surrender to the inevitable and talked about getting a cup of coffee and sitting out in the front yard with their neighbors and talking. I don't know. I really don't know. What could you do with that much time? That it would definitely cause panic. Just hang out with my family, the people I loved, and tell everybody how I felt about them, I guess.
That seemed to be the predominant response. So it seemed to be actually the reports that I read online. It appears that there was almost a polar response. People either went completely stacking couch cushions on top of themselves, trying to seek shelter wherever they could, or else they were like, oh, hell, I'm in Hawaii. I guess if you're going to be annihilated, this is not a bad place to have it happen. There was a Twitter feed where someone had posed the question, well, I wonder how many false alarm babies we're going to see in Hawaii in 9 months.
One of my friends back in Hawaii, I call him my friend. I've talked with him a few times, but we keep liking each other's stuff on Facebook. Can't say enough about this guy. And he's a state senator from the state of Hawaii, Russell Ruderman, posted up on his Facebook wall some of the quotes that he saw that day, some of his favorites, and he added it to a short list here. In quotes, well, that button works. Another one, someone had the worst day at work ever. Oh, another person, I couldn't get anywhere in a few minutes, but I'm glad my kid knows I love him.
Yeah.
And another, get that F ... out of the White House, which I think is absolutely true. None of this would have happened last year, would it? I don't think. I mean, tensions have always been high with North Korea, and they weren't rosy with Obama. But they are kind of at a simmer level. I thought things were fairly contained over there, but now, and the world's kind of turned the optics on this. Even Putin this week declared that Kim Jong-un was the winner of this cold nuclear war battle going on Twitter with Trump, that he was much more mature than Trump was in this situation.
Wow.
That's the whole world. Unfortunately, he kind of got the rest of the world to agree with him on that. We're viewed as the hostile state that's unpredictable, and people should be preparing about what we're going to do, not what North Korea is going to do.
Yeah. Doesn't that make you feel comfortable?
That's damaging the stock of the United States internationally, unlike I've ever seen. You know, not since the Second World War. I mean, we've always been the champion of freedom and a world leader, and now they want nothing to do with us. In fact, Great Britain, the mayor of London, said that Trump really got the message, and that's why he canceled his trip to London recently. And I can't remember the excuse that Trump gave, but it's pretty apparent that he did get the message and knew that he would be met with many, many people that would be protesting him for inciting racial hatred, is what they call it over there. It's a crime.
Right. And it makes you wonder, I mean, where is it safe for Trump to travel without fear of being arrested for something? I mean, he's getting to the point where he's crossing so many lines that he's going to have hostile greetings.
It's damaging our position in the world. And what kind of gets me too is the GOP has always championed themselves as this party of self-reliance and taking responsibility for your own actions. They've got this guy in the White House doing damage to this country, and they will not do diddly squat to rein him in, take away his Twitter account.
Yeah.
Somebody stop this guy. He's obviously a loose cannon, and he's touting his button. One thing I want to close on here is that we will be going to the Women's March, which is being dubbed the March for Impeachment and a lot of other things. But traditionally, the J20 for women for many, many years, January 20th, we're going to be at the Des Moines Capitol, talking to people, meeting people, and catching up. Maybe having a pork tenderloin. Can't wait to see you there.
I'm looking forward to the Jamaican food truck, frankly. Yeah, last year there was a great Jamaican food truck at the Women's March.
I'll be wearing a pink hat. I got a friend that's making me a pink hat made out of fleece.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll keep our eyes open and our ears peeled. Keep you informed of what's happening next week. This is Sunny Riverside saying adios.